We are activating your unique self-discovery one show at a time. The Orchard of Wisdom Self-Discovery podcast are at your fingertips, just waiting to inspire and invite you in discovering just how awesome you really are and how to navigate through life in joy, enrichment, personal abundance, in mind, body, spirit, heart, and soul. All the people we bring you are here to serve you on your journey of life. Do enjoy our next show. Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening, everybody. Welcome back to another edition of An Author's Kiss right here on selfdiscoverymedia.com. I'm your host, Sarah Troy, and my wonderful guest today is Will Robertson, the storytelling biz. Well, he has quite a number of books himself, this wonderful series of Casey and Kyle children's books, and it became something that was so important to him that he actually went into the business of supporting other authors, whether it's children's books or any other type of authors, and helping them kind of really become bestsellers on their own, because he knows the importance of a book and what it can mean to someone and how it is something that keeps on giving. He's the president and CEO of Casey and Kyle Inc. and the writer cartoonist of the family comic Casey and Kyle. He's passionate about the power of storytelling and how he's helped publish over 400 children's books for independent authors, including several Amazon bestsellers. We're going to discuss today the kind of the business mindset you need to have around building your persona, your work-life balance, and how to have a happy, healthy relationship with lifestyle, family, religion, politics, and self-improvement books, and writing, arts, music, building confidence, a level up to 10 in that. And we're also going to be talking about how to become an author. I'm in the process of my book at the present moment, and I've been fishing around for how to publish it. And it really is quite eye-opening when, people say it's just 40,000 or just 60,000. And people look at it and go, ah, I just want to get the story out there. But they also don't understand there's an art to the way of presenting a story. First and foremost, great idea, but also your heart in it. And then there's a structure to it that is needed as well. So let's pick Will's brain on exactly how we do publish a book, why he started his own series of books, and where it's taken him, because I'm not sure you actually, when you did your first book, knew it was going to take you on this journey. Hey, Will, welcome to the show.
Thank you. Yeah, it definitely has been a journey. When I started writing, I was creating cartoons online and was really just kind of focusing on that. And one day I was like, I wonder how many are in a book. And when I counted them up, I was just a couple cartoons short. And I go, I think I'm going to make a book. And that was kind of the very beginning of my journey as an author myself.
So the cartooning kind of came first. The storytelling through the cartooning came first.
Yeah, my goal each day was to make people laugh, and I do it better the next day and better the next day. And I developed an online following and started to get feedback from people. We like this, we don't like this, and honed my craft from there. And when the first book came out, it was kind of off to the races. It was during a time period kind of in the Great Recession, and so it was a good time to start a venture. Kind of see it through, and there were a lot of opportunities because so many things weren't going at full speed. Places were more willing to host book signings and things like that, which made it really easy to get started.
Very often the pauses that we get in life, a lot of people moan and groan about them, and instead of look at it as a gift. Very often it's a gift of redirect or a pausing to revalue your life and where is really the passion? Because if we're not living in the passion, are we living truly in our true calling? And a great deal of passion needs to come out of that. And we don't often take enough pauses in our life to actually reflect. And we just kind of mindlessly, robotically keep going through life, chasing something, to realize if we took a breath, we would realize it's right there. And this is what we're meant to pursue. So, recession did you a favor.
Looking back, it did. At the time, anyone felt like it was a favor, but it did open doors in the same way that I think for many people, COVID had that potential in that suddenly you could meet with people that was very challenging to meet with, that you could meet with in other ways. And so whereas on one level, it was a big setback. And another level, it made some things easier. And, you know, for me entering the cartoon business, it was good timing for me.
Mm.
So
So obviously one book turned into many. How many books are there in Casey and Kyle right now?
you think I'll have four books, and then there's a collection of my favorite cartoons from the books as
Hmm.
a fifth book. And then I have one picture book in addition called Boxes, but kind of a different, just a different concept than the cartoons themselves, but still in that same, for the same audience.
Right. Why why children? You know, why kind of aiming it at children? A lot of people who do, you know, cartoon type work kind of, you know, take the troubles of the world and kind of cynicalize it through cartoon things. But, you know, why did you go the children route?
Well, first of all, I have children. I have
Hmm.
five,
What?
but I have five boys. We have a
Oh my
rowdy house.
God, your own soccer company.
But when I was younger, I had a lot of pleasure from reading cartoons myself.
Hmm.
I had favorites, as did everyone, and I used to go to the little thrift stores, secondhand stores, and I would get for 25 cents. I would get a comic book, take it home and devour it, studying it, laughing at it, put it on the shelf. I had a whole collection, and what I really wanted to do was that.
Hmm.
I enjoyed it so much that I wanted to recreate it. A lot of, especially as the newspapers have kind of fallen down a bit in
Mm.
circulation. They're not as much in the forefront of people's minds each day. Um, the newspaper style cartoons is not necessarily what everybody's pursuing. As you mentioned, a lot of people are trying to go the more pushing the envelope,
Hmm.
of maybe being more risque, maybe being more graphic. But for me, my motivation was always just to kind of provide pleasure. And honestly, at the end of the day, I have a couple family members that my goal was always to make them laugh, you
Hmm.
know. And if I could make them laugh, then that kind of is when I write a cartoon. I go, oh, I wonder if this would make them laugh, and kind of that's what I always aim for.
And then
Kind
when
of
you make somebody laugh, you want to share the laughter. Everybody
exactly.
needs a good laugh, right? You know, I mean, you know, especially in a world that likes to take itself so seriously, we've forgotten actually simple art of joy and laughter and having fun. And I think sometimes having something just to remind you that kind of resets you and puts you back on track, right?
There's enough stress and frustration in the world that you can create. I tell people it's not a bad gig when you get up in the morning. You go, let's see if we can make people enjoy themselves a little bit today.
Mm-hmm. Now, this redirected you along the line to serving other authors. Why did you decide to go along that route?
You know, when I was doing a book signing event, a woman came to my table and she said, "Hey, you made your book. Would you be able to help me make mine? I'm having trouble with it." And I said, "Sure, sure, let's do it." And so I worked with her on her book, and then she had a whole series of books that she then needed help with. And so I helped her put her books together and enjoyed it. It was a little different doing a standard picture book from doing a cartoon book, but it was fun.
Yeah.
And she introduced me to the person who had done their illustrations, and he needed people to help design books for the authors he was working with, and it just kind of grew and
Mhm.
became kind of organically. It grew, began working with more authors. Uh, Different books presented new challenges. It was exciting to kind of tackle those challenges and kind of see the books come together. And then a lot of times those books became my own kids' favorite books.
Mhm.
You realize you're helping create something that even your own family's enjoying, and it's just very rewarding. So I think that there is, within the children's publishing world, there's obviously just kind of silly fun books that don't
Mhm.
matter, but there's a way, without being blatantly preachy, there's really a way to kind of speak to young readers in a way that's going to change the way that they think about the world. And I'm not necessarily always a fan of being so blatant, but even on the just within the simple act of telling stories, you are affecting the way that
Yeah.
children are going to think about things. There's a power to that. There's a responsibility with it, but there's a power to it that is, you know, interesting to see how a story can do that. And the good children's books do the same thing for older readers. The really good children's books are not
Yes.
just, they speak to anyone through storytelling and simple pictures.
I
And
think,
that, go ahead.
I have a 19-month-old grandson, and they've been reading to him almost from the day he's been born, and he loves books, and they love reading to him. And um, my son-in-law is a cosplayer, so he loves to play it up. And everybody
Yeah.
has that excuse, to kind of go into the silly voice and do everything and make it fun. But what I love is when you have a book that a kid loves, and at 19 months, he's receiving something totally differently, right? He maybe
Mm-hmm.
not even comprehending exactly what the story is, but there's certain aspects of it that he likes, or the pictures that he likes. And he has his favorite books, he'll bring them to you. But I think for anybody reading them, the parents, the grandparents, the babysitter, the older brothers and sisters, it comes a kind of a reset back into simple joy, or the message that's in there, because there's so many beautiful messages that you can insert in there for a child. And at the same time, I think it is a reminder for the older generation to kind of like, why, that's a great message. How come I've forgotten this? Or,
Uh,
I'm not paying attention to this message. And, I've always said a really good children's book reteaches the adult's child within.
Absolutely. I I wrote a book called uh, about 10 years ago about simplicity. It's about a boy, his favorite box, and an adventure they go on. But on a fundamental level, it's about finding happiness in the simple things in life. And I did that the drawings for that book with charcoal and kept it very simple, black and white,
Mm,
with a sketch look to it. It really connects very well. I was surprised because I wrote it for my son,
mhm.
uh, but we find people buy it for graduations. People buy it for a friend of theirs, an adult friend of theirs that they think it would connect with, and we find as many adults buy it for adults as kids buy it for kids, or parents buy it for their kids. I think that the good stories that
Mm.
kids hit you on every level, and kids can take away one thing. Humor is the same way.
Yes.
A good joke, kids get it, and adults get it on a deeper
Yeah.
level. And I'm not talking about entendres.
Hmm.
They go, but with just real humor, it can be appreciated regardless of the age of the person hearing it. But at a different level.
The level of comprehension, and the beauty of a book is revisiting it sometime later, and then
Right.
relearning what the message is, or getting it in a different way. And I think that's also exciting, as a book keeps on giving. It's you can pick up a book. I mean, I was moving a little while ago, and picking up books that I read years ago and then looking at them again, and you are going to comprehend a book in the state of mind you're in at that time. And if you're in a different state of mind or a different need, because I do think a book calls to you, when you need something, that book is there with that wonderful simplistic wisdom that you need in that moment. So, I think books are just something that are a constant gift that keeps on giving to you over and over again, as well as, to many, many people, because they're all going to get out of it what they need in that moment.
If you read The Giving Tree as a kid
Hmm.
by Shel Silverstein, you're going to get a different experience than if you read it as someone in middle age. Or I'm
Yeah.
later in my life, I'll read it from a different position as well, and you take away from it where you are at and what the story is telling you in that time.
Yes.
That's the beautiful thing about a well crafted story is that element.
Yeah, that keeps, there's so many different layers. But it's also great when a kid can turn around and start asking you questions about the story. It opens
Yes,
up that wonderful invitation for conversation. Well, what does
100%.
it mean, or what does that mean? Well, what do you think it means? What
Mhm.
do you perceive from it? And then you can give your opinion, and you're opening up that wonderment to look at things from a different point of view. And I think that I think book clubs are absolutely great. And I recommend people have podcast clubs where they listen to a podcast and each person then discusses what they got out of it, because then we actually realize how many layers there are to things, and that
Mhm.
the different perceptions. And when you put all those perceptions down, you're getting a whole picture, something you hadn't thought about, but now, oh yeah, you're right, oh, I haven't thought about that. And I think it's wonderful to do that. You'll see that when you're reading to a lot of children at one time, different types of giggles or different
Mhm.
types of interactions that go on. So I think we were so busy chasing the outside world, this
Mhm.
expectation of what we should be and everything else, when we can have stories that remind us it's an inside out job, connect
Mhm.
to your heart, to your spirit, to your soul, and become that beautiful instrument you were meant to become in life, and nurture it and let it grow and let it manifest in the way it's meant to. I think a lot of the time kids go through this hard time, especially when they go to school, because that's when conformity starts. You must fit into this box. And we kill
Mhm.
so much creativity in them at that time, so much wonderment. Instead of, in creating a world of knowledge where they want to know more, it becomes, no, this is the only knowledge you're allowed to have, and you're not allowed to think further. And I think if we more and more can create and have those books that fill in those gaps and keep that wonderment alive, I think that sense of adventure and wonderment and exploration will be something that they will grow up with and always be with them.
Mhm. Absolutely. Absolutely.
So, being an author now, which I mean, what was your line of work before you started all of this?
I played guitar in music groups, and I worked in the food industry. So I played guitar, and then I made tacos.
Both very interesting worlds. I come from the restaurant industry, and one of my favorite things is to interview actually musicians, because musicians are already in tune. They're already
Yes,
connected. They are at one with the instrument and the music. So there
right.
isn't a need to find themselves. They are themselves with the music, which I think is wonderful. And obviously, are you teaching music to your kids, to your 5 kids? Are any one of them kind of picked up an instrument and said, "This is it for me"?
Yeah, yeah, and I approach it a little different because I toured all around the country, playing music, and so I got that kind of sense of needing to be on the road a lot and kind of traveling and um, having to get past any shyness I had to be able to
Mm-hmm.
people afterwards and things like that. And I got a lot of experiences from that that were really useful later on for writing, to draw
Mm-hmm.
on memory things. And so when I teach my kids music, I teach them from like a working musician kind of way
Yes.
of handling it, as far as getting the right tools, making sure the instrument is, quality enough. Um, and my oldest son, he and I like to play piano together, play guitar together.
Mm,
We have a ton of instruments around the house. People are always giving us instruments, it seems like. So we keep a little posse. And uh, I used to record a lot, and a lot of times you'd have to learn an instrument pretty
mm,
quick to be able to record it,
mm.
because there was a need and no one around played it, so you'd have to figure it out quickly. So I've been teaching that concept of, okay, well, here's an instrument, let's figure out how to take what we've learned from guitar and apply it with a few techniques, to a banjo, for
Yeah.
example. And a lot of skills are transferable from one
Yes.
instrument to another.
Do you
So
know Justin Johnson?
I do not.
Americana Blues. People
Okay.
make him guitars made out of oil cans or spades or things like that, car parts. And he also goes around to schools teaching them how to make a guitar with 3 strings. I interviewed him some years ago and trying to get him back again, but he's just like so popular now. But and it's Americana blues. And when I talk about somebody being the instrument, when he's playing, he is the instrument. But basically, he can take anything and put it together with strings and make music out of it, and loves to show kids, people how to do that. And your whole point of learning and those transferable skills, whether you violin, piano, whatever, it's just a different way of playing the instrument, just an instrument to express it. But if you've got the music in you, if the music is within you, it doesn't matter how you're playing it, right? Some may be stronger than others, but you'll find a way to express.
Absolutely. Yeah, people can, if you've become proficient, the theory is the theory,
Yeah.
and so it's a different way of it kind of, and it doesn't mean that you're going to be so great at it, but when you travel, from one place to another, you learn how to say the important things
Mhm.
where you are, and it's that same. I may not be fluent in French, but if I go to France, I'm gonna be able to say the handful of things that are most essential while I pick up the rest.
Right.
Um, get around and things like that. It's the same concept with instruments. You know how to talk, you know how to communicate. How do you communicate within the framework of where you're at and
Mhm.
the that you're at? And that's always a learning situation. You're going to have bumps along the way, but you can get started. You don't have to worry about waiting. You can start with what you've got and go from there.
Exactly. It's not the destination, right? It's the journey that makes things so exciting.
Keeping a sense of fun with it.
Mm, yeah.
Um, yeah.
How much of your music had an influence on your writing?
I would say in the sense of collaboration a lot, because when I was writing for music, I started off doing it by myself. But what you quickly learn is that sometimes working with other people gets you there in a way that maybe you wouldn't get there yourself faster, and sometimes with a different insight. And so when I write cartoons, a lot of times I'll do it myself, but I also have people that I'll bring in and say, "Hey, what do you think of this?" And people, I have some trusted people on my team who will come up with some, maybe they should do this. Oh, what a good idea! Let's
Mhm.
try that. And so the collaborative process, I think, from music was the biggest takeaway.
Mm,
Is not feeling like you have to do every single part yourself.
right.
Writing novels can be challenging to do with other people. However, at the same time, having people you can bounce ideas off of
Yeah.
that can help spin you in other directions, I think, in general, makes for a stronger storytelling experience. It's interesting with authors because with authors, there is definitely the idea that you should do it yourself.
Hmm.
Unique storytelling, because almost no other storytelling field is that way. A TV show is a large collaborative
Hmm.
process. Film, which is a story, is a huge collaborative process. Traditionally, cartoons have had people. A Marvel comic book has a team of people who work on it. But when it comes down to writing a novel, it tends to be one person going at it. And even though one person may write the words, I do think that sometimes having people that you can uh, feed off of during the creative process and the crafting process of where your story is going to go leads to a better story, because it may go in a way that is less obvious.
Yeah. Yes.
Maybe
Different perspective, different viewpoints, right? Yeah. Shedding light on something that you would not see because you're too entrenched in it.
correct. Yeah, and I had a friend. He is passed now, but he was a gifted writer, and he, sometimes when I was crafting ideas for larger stories, have you thought about this? Have you thought about this? Um, he was a gun enthusiast, and so one of the ideas I had, which was it was not for a children's book, but a person had a weapon. He's like, "Oh, this kind," and he pulled out his he's pulled out of his boot his gun. Couldn't believe it. I was like, "Yeah, that's the one." He's like, make sure when you write about it, you don't forget this detail. I was like, oh, okay. Because otherwise, they're going to know you don't know anything about it.
Right.
Oh, so anyway, little things that I would not necessarily have thought of myself, but
Mm.
just even that little bit of collaboration, makes it a little more authentic. So
Yeah, my brother is
anyway,
a professional author, and he'll send me, his writing, and I'll come back with feedback. Or, I don't like where you're taking that character, or, I love this. This is so cool. Elaborate on that. And it just helps him kind of look at things differently. But, going back to collaboration, I have an analogy that we're all here to discover what our instrument is and then learn how to play it. I'm not necessarily talking musical instrument, just instrument in life. Learn how to play it, and then we seek out an orchestra in which we can play it in. But that orchestra is only as strong as each individual that has chosen to come together in harmony, in synchronicity, and play together. It's not about the ego. It's not one upshining the other. It's all bringing their expertise to make that orchestra as strong and as beautiful as possible as it is. And I think that is a metaphor for all aspects of life.
When we were recording, the producers we work with would always remind us that at the end of the day, the song was king. Whatever the song needed is what the individuals needed to put into it.
Yeah.
So sometimes the cool part that you wanted in the song didn't help the song.
Mm-hmm.
So it didn't stay. Sometimes you had to change something. Maybe it needed a restructuring or something to make the song better. With writing, it's also a very similar thing. The story or the book is king. Whatever the story or the book needs is what you have to give it. And the challenge there is ego sometimes comes and says, well, this is what I want. But what does the story need to do its best?
Yes.
That's what you have to do. Sometimes that takes it in a different direction. Sometimes it means that you need an editor. Sometimes, but whatever it needs, that's what you have to give it.
And I think we have to be careful with editors. Because I've just written my memoir and I'm a very spiritual person and I speak and do everything rhythmically. And, although, yes, the grammar and the spelling and all of that, please make sure it's in check. But I don't want people coming in and chopping everything, trying to use a word instead of a sentence because I'm changing the meaning of it. And it's like, you've got to have that editor that respects your story and in the way that you're telling it, because there's so many editors out there that are kind of cookie cutter. And then that means you're just kind of generic like everybody else. So everybody has a style of writing, and it's finding editors that respects your style and can perfect it to a point that everybody else will respect your style too.
True. I agree.
But hard to find. I'm
It's true.
I'm definitely having a hard time finding it. So hard to find someone who does respect the story.
Mm-hmm. You have to understand what the purpose of the story is within there.
What's the song, right? It's about the song, so it's about the story. Yeah.
Right. What is the point of what's being done, and how do you give it its body to get it to accomplish what it's trying to do?
Yeah.
That's, I think, the proper role of an editor, and of course, cleaning up the grammar.
Yes. Yes.
Yes.
And it is, I mean, I found it quite daunting, kind of, no, not the writing, because I just let it come out. It's just the rereading it, and that so many authors that I've interviewed is like, did the characters take a life of their own, and all of a sudden they're running off without you, so to speak, and taking down a road altogether. And even in writing my memoir, and reading it back, I'm looking at common threads or where it went that I didn't necessarily think it was going, but it did. Have you found that in your own writing? Which comes first for you? Do you actually draw the cartoons and then write the words, or is it the words and then the cartoons?
So it's a little of both when we're talking about cartoons. I the key when I was 16, I got to talk with Charles Schulz, who drew Peanuts famously.
Right.
I got to talk to him for about 15 to 20 minutes on the phone. And he told me a few things which I've carried with me. One was to focus on the funny picture. People should smile when they see it, even if they don't read the words. And the other one was to make sure that the characters were real characters. Make sure that the characters had personalities.
Yeah.
That line, in his words, line that would go for Lucy, somebody else shouldn't be able to say that line. It should be obvious that Lucy line, right? And so I've carried those things in my own work and tried to build characters. When you build characters, what I do is a lot of times I'll try and create a scenario. Let's create the scenario. What would the characters start to do in this scenario? And well, if taking Casey and Kyle, the two main characters, if Casey did this, what would Kyle do? And
Right.
then where do we do it? Typically, that if the scenario is funny, the characters will lead you to an even funnier place with it.
Hmm.
Maybe one of the friends would pop by then, and then the friend will add his own personality to the mix. And so um, that's a challenge sometimes with creating characters because you want to create a type of character, but that character does not yet have a personality that will let them be a participant in the cartoon.
Mm.
You need somebody who's identifiable that has enough personality that their personality will lead you into funny places. So a lot of times I'll start with a scenario more than a joke, and then I will kind of hammer out where that is going to go. The other way that I start is I just create a picture that is funny, which I guess is another backward way of saying the same thing. I create a scenario, a funny
Yes.
picture. Where is that funny picture going to take me? Both ways are very successful, and create connection between the reader and the characters.
Hmm.
If you don't have strong characters, you don't have anything for people to connect to. No one cares what happens
Right.
to a character
Yeah.
about.
Yeah. How much of your own kids are in your characters?
So it was inspired by my first two kids when they were 4 and 1. Now my oldest is 19, and he actually helps collaborate on
Neat.
the itself. Um, and I would say it was built. All of the characters are either built on how they were or different parts of my own personality. And so the dad is the goofy, fun-loving part of my personality, whereas the mom is the more sarcastic, feisty personality. And there's a kid who loves the army. He dresses in camo, and everything is army, army, and that is the really playful, kind of obsessive part of me that just gets really excited about certain things. Um, and so a lot of it is either based on my kids or it's inspired just by parts of me that I think are interesting that I want to share through a character.
The kid within you.
The kid within me, yeah.
Mm-hmm. I think we forget about that kid within us. It's always the emphasis of grow up, grow up, grow up. But we need to
Mhm.
take that kid with us wherever we go. That kid has such beautiful innocence and honesty and sincerity and is so connected to the heart and soul that if we leave our kid behind, I think that's where we get lost.
Yeah, I think what people want to do is they want to be mature,
Mm,
and they see maturity as being at war with the childlike spirit. And I don't think that they're at war with each or should be at war with each other.
no.
You can, in the same way that you need to teach children to clean their room, people have to work, they have to do their job, but you can do your work with a sense of purpose and joy that's not so dissimilar to a kid making a project and working on it all afternoon. Where a lot of times that concept of feeling like you have to be a certain way is what pushes people to become a certain way, and then they miss, or kind of that childlike side is latent, and people wish they could draw it out, and they just don't feel like they have the time. But it's kind of in there wishing it could come out more, I think, for a lot of people.
Yes, so the only person that can give you permission is yourself, and it's again living up to society's expectation of what you should be as opposed to who you really are, and never
Right.
losing sight of that. And again, I think that's when an adult reads a child's book, it's a re-invitation for the child to come out, and and a reminder. It's a reminder that we don't have to be childish, but being childlike is always that connection, which is important to have. Otherwise, we take ourselves too seriously, and then ego steps in, and we start living the exterior life and not the interior life, and we lose ourselves. And this is so much harder to come back from than just being true to who you are all along the way.
Yeah, and people will try and play with their kids. The worst thing to happen is to realize that you forgot how. You
Yes.
get a and you go, oh no, what do I do now? They bring you the toys and you go, oh man, okay, well, I guess we'll try. You got to keep that spirit in you, even if it's little times to take a walk and daydream or something, and just kind of
Yes.
let the spirit in a little bit.
Yeah.
So.
I've always been, I was a very sickly child growing up, so I spent many, many weeks on end at home in bed alone. And so storytelling in my own mind, became my survival. And as I
Mm,
couldn't live the physical life, this world life, I would go off in, other dimensions and live over there. And
right.
to this day, there is always a story in my head before I go to sleep. Always, right? So it's just become so much a part of who I am. And I think also kind of an invitation to how you want the world to treat you, and what story you're telling. So it's all vibrational out there. Now, you've really stepped out and gone even further, where now you actually have apparel and you have all sorts of other things that you sell with the characters, the fanny packs, shoes, t-shirts, and everything to do with the characters. And this is a very wise move. You didn't just stop at the books.
Mhm. When you build around characters and you build a sense of, see, every character has a side of whimsy that someone's going to identify with,
Yeah.
and different people. Honestly, at the end of the day, it's creating a mechanism for people to express that childlike nature.
Hmm.
Ways that maybe, you know, they're going to wear a shirt, but if they wear a shirt with Casey, they're like, yeah, I feel like a Casey day. This is, it's reminding me of Casey, and kind of a fun moment with Casey, and it's a way to connect with that. And people have their favorite characters. I'm sometimes surprised by what people's favorite characters are, because you know, initially I thought Casey was going to be the prime character, and then suddenly Kyle, is really popular with a large of people. Um, in a way that I didn't anticipate.
Hmm.
He doesn't talk. He's just kind of in the background being goofy, crying when the ball's taken. People love him.
Everybody
And
loves the goofiness, right? That's
yes,
permission to be.
yeah, people want permission to be goofy.
Yes.
And so giving them things that they can express that side of them is important. And again, it comes back to characters. This is something most authors can do if they build characters that people care about. There's a children's series, Elephant and Piggy by Mo Willems. Um, Huge hit in my house. It's an elephant and a pig, and they are friends, and they enjoy each other's company. And there's a theme for each book. But my kids connect so much with those two characters
Hmm.
that they want to know what's happening next. If
Yes.
there's a new book they haven't read, they want that book. You never have to wonder if that book is going to be appreciated, because it's an elephant and piggy book.
Yeah.
So the first, story is king, characters are king, making sure that the character is one that people are going to connect with, and then they'll have an attachment to it. So any author, I encourage authors to make apparel, one for their own enjoyment,
Hmm.
because it's to have things with your own work on it, but two, to let people share in what you're doing on a deeper level than just the book. And uh, if someone's wearing clothes
Yes.
about the book, they're thinking about that book
Hmm.
all day while they're wearing it. So you're
You
whatever you're
see
trying.
it with the Disney, you see it with the Marvels, you see it everything. The kid wants to wear the outfit of their hero. And if, Casey and Kyle have become their heroes, they want the outfits.
They want the outfits.
Yeah.
If a kid's dressed up as Spider-Man, they are Spider-Man.
Yes.
Uh, on some level, if an adult is dressed as Spider-Man, on some level they're like, I feel like Spider-Man today.
Yeah.
Um, and so if people are taking Casey and Kyle apparel, we want them thinking, Casey and Kyle, I love it. It's so much fun. I'm having fun wearing it.
Right.
That's what we're trying to. Yeah.
A little
So,
while ago, my daughter and I were in a secondhand store buying Rowan, my grandson, a few new things, and I found this book which they had when they were young, and I thought, oh, we've got to pick this up, and it's like "Love You Forever." I don't know if you know the story, but it's really, really beautiful, and it's about a mother rocking her child, saying, "I'll love you forever," and then later on, the child holding the mother. And my daughter, when we got home, I gave it to her, and she read it. Her husband had never ever heard of it, so she was reading it to him. She couldn't get through the book She just was crying away too much. He had to finish it because that story meant so much to her when she was young that it brought so much back out for her as well. And especially now being a mother, right? The connection to that. And that, there again is that reminder of a book that long forgotten. And then you discover it again and you realize how impactful that story was. And, especially when you look at your circumstances today of why it's again so impactful. And this is why I say a book keeps on giving, it never dies.
Absolutely. That author came to my school when I was in kindergarten or first grade. Um, Robert Munch, I want
Yes.
to say
Yes.
that. And so I had that book growing up.
Yeah.
Uh, it was always whenever I see it, I try and pick up one.
Yes.
Of those.
Yeah. No, no, it's really, I mean, he really was a beautiful writer. And, um, you know, I've I mean, I keep giving my grandson books because they get a little tired of doing the same old story, right? But he has these stories that he absolutely loves. And so I'm always, I picked up from one of the authors I interviewed a couple of weeks ago, Halloween books. So I'm seeing him this week. I go every 2 weeks to look after him. And, it's a joy because he snuggles up. He has his chair. He loves to snuggle up and then just read. And again, it's what he's getting out of it. Who knows as a 19-month-old? But it is that connection, that snuggle time, that quiet time, that getting into the story, allowing the voices and everything to come out. I think it's precious. I think it's
Mm-hmm.
precious time that you're giving your kids, but you're also giving them the gift of, if you're not there to read for them, the love of reading and of that quiet time, of a tangible book in your hand, not a tablet, a tangible book, is finding a little corner just to
Mm-hmm.
read it and go off in their own beautiful wonderland of this story. And I think it's one of the problems I'm seeing in society now, and I'm seeing it so much amongst adults, is everybody's become headliners. They read the
Mm-hmm.
headlines or just read the emojis and they're not reading the content. And they come back to you with, what's this, what's that? And I said, just read further down the document. It's all there. And people have become too busy or lazy. I'm not quite sure really what's going on, but I think they're doing them a disservice, themselves a disservice by not slowing down and taking the time to read, whatever it is to read, a novel, a contract, information. Take the time out to read because we're missing that connection of what words on a page can mean to us. And I think having our children understand the value of books and the written word and how it can translate into your world is so important. Um, my brother is a professional writer, but he actually, for a long time, quite a number of years, went into youth writing
Okay.
because he loved that genre where he can take, the 14 to 17-year-olds or something, and they're going on adventures. And some of them are just so, extraordinary that they take you into such different worlds and seeing it from that youth perspective, is kind
Mm-hmm.
of quite exciting, and the things that they will accept that we've become cynical as the oldest and like that would never do, that would never do. But you vicariously live through the teenager, go, ooh, that's interesting. So again, don't just think because you're an adult you can't read a youth book. Pick them up. Northern Lights is one of my absolute favorite, Philip Pullman. And to this day, it's still one of my favorites. So, the as an adult, if you want to understand what your children are thinking, read the children's books for yourself because it will
Mm-hmm.
help you actually understand where they're at.
I am always surprised when I find that parents do not read the books that their children are reading.
Mm-hmm.
I never understand that concept, but it's common. And I do think you want to read children's literature. You know, I think of children's literature as literature. It's
Yeah.
not where it's not a second class tier. It should be quality, for children. It should be a book that an adult would read.
Yeah.
I mean, clearly you have some books, that are blue and there's a picture of something blue and you turn the page and green.
Mm-hmm.
You have some very basic books to teach kids colors or things like
Yes.
that. But when you've got a story with a narrative and characters, uh, it should be a book that can work on any level and someone can get enjoyment out of.
Yeah.
It's honestly, it's one of the it's not just a child's first contact with reading, but in some ways, it's the child's first contact with visual artistry
Yes.
as well, because on the writing side, of course, the words are important, but on the user side, the images themselves are essential to developing a kid's understanding of beauty, both of the written word, but also of the beauty around them. And regardless of the environment that the child is
Mm,
in, the book can transport them not just from the story itself, but from the visuals of what they can experience on a
yeah.
different level. And what's interesting is, from a movie standpoint, a lot of the film and TV with the new style of animation begins to look similar from company to company. But
Hmm.
illustration take you in a wide range of visual opportunities. So whether you're getting and of course they don't look the same, but there is a similarity
A template.
to what the animated movies and cartoons shows are looking like for kids. There always has kind of been a shorthand for
Hmm.
that, but from an illustration standpoint, each illustrator is bringing their own style. And
Mm.
if you go and you look at the book section, there is a wide range of art that the kid is getting as well. So I think on that level, children's books are incredibly important.
Yeah. The other emphasis I'm going to put in the dangers of your kids reading an ebook, reading the screen.
Mm-hmm.
It has been absolutely proven that psychologically and for their brain development, to have so much time in front of a screen, any screen, phone, tablet, whatever, is bad for them, and that to limit the amount that they take in. But there's also nothing to substitute of an absolute paper book in your hand and either being read to or having all of your kids in one room quietly reading their own books. What a beautiful scene. And I think it's teaching them to be present with themselves and the story of the moment. It's teaching them time out and calmness. It's teaching them wonderment and exploration and whatever other lesson that's in the book. But I think it's really important to have, and I do worry about people who just hand over the tablet for a kid to look at the constant movement, and it's not good for your child's brain waves. And this has been proven. Limit that amount of time. But there is never any harm coming from reading a book.
Mm-hmm. True. There was a large push of us to do. We ran a magazine for a couple of years that went to 40,000 school kids
Hmm.
each quarter with cartoons, and then um, me and a team of people wrote different stories for different types of characters and would have them illustrated as well. And it went to elementary and middle school students in the region that I
Hmm.
lived in. There was a large push to have that done digitally to
Hmm.
save money. But we felt, and we do feel, that, I mean, we have ebooks.
Yes.
And I do think it's smart to have an ebook as an author.
Hmm.
As a consumer, I appreciate books that you can pass down and
Hmm.
a physical that is real. Not just because cartoons read on your phone have to be. I'll go off on a small tangent there. When you have to books, children's books or cartoons on, and they're going to be read on a phone, you have to inevitably simplify so that it can be appreciated. And the beauty of it is removed in many
Mm.
aspects. Beauty of the drawing, because you have to simplify the drawing. On the newspaper side, on the newspaper cartoon side, this was happening anyway, as newspapers kept shrinking the
Hmm.
space. Um, and so you had to simplify the drawings to fit in a smaller space. But even with children's books, a lot of times the mechanisms, they don't translate as well to digital,
Yeah.
and a lot of the beauty is lost, and it becomes content rather than something beautiful that you're giving to
Hmm.
someone. And I understand that we live in a world where people are creating content left and right. To speak to your concept about slowing down and enjoying the read, you like to think of as a writer, and I think it's important to attempt as a writer to not just create content to fill the air, but to create a statement that you're going to pass on that is going to provide joy, happiness, perhaps a lesson. Although I think it's fine to just entertain, but creating something that is going to make an impact rather than just something that you next, come off to the next thing. And I get concerned with the digital side that so much becomes just filler content to fill
Yeah.
up space.
Yes. I mean, if you're reading a novel and there aren't any pictures or anything in it, and obviously at a certain age, then yes, it's very convenient for people. They can have several books on their thing and read it anywhere on, whereas a book might be a little harder. But there's still just something, I'm probably old, and I really do like a book in my hand.
Right.
And be able to turn the pages, etc., no matter what it is. But I do understand the convenience of it. But that's fine for certain ages up, but I don't like it for younger children at all. I think it takes away from the tangible, from the imagination, from people being able to snuggle with you to do it. But it also, again, proven that it's really, really bad for their brain waves, etc.
I would rather see someone read on a tablet than not read,
Right.
but I feel like there's more physical joy.
Yes.
Uh, from the standpoint of ebooks, I do read a lot of books on my phone. However, what I find is um, when you have a physical book, you do remember to read it,
Yeah.
and sometimes get lost on in the archives because you don't have a visual reminder all the time of the books that you have. It's nice to have a book. We were talking the other day, my son and I, about the differences in living rooms,
Hmm.
because uh, all the furniture that used to be in living rooms is somewhat obsolete. It used to be that a lot of families would have a record player, and you'd
Hmm.
have shelves for the records. You'd have a bookshelf, and you might have a TV console with room for movies on there.
Yes.
And all of those functionalities are now on your phone or on your tablet, and all those furnitures. And then it's sometimes people feel, they've spoken to me, you feel like, how come I can't get my living rooms to look nice? You go, well, there's no furniture anymore. It's just
Right.
a TV. Whereas there used to be functionality that kind of gave a room a sense of purpose around the things that people enjoy doing communally. To speak to your idea of communally, we have a record player. We listen to music on our phones as well, but we have a record player and a large record collection. And um, the kind of quietness and simplicity of putting a record on,
Hmm.
cleaning the record, listening to it, having 22 minutes before you have to decide if you want to listen to more music. It doesn't just play forever.
Hmm.
Um, you're making more choices on how you're going to spend your time, and it's more communal.
More
People are
engaging too.
more engaging. I mean, you can do it with an MP3. It's fine. We do it too. Specifically, we have music that isn't on record that we like to listen to. But there is something kind of nice about the camaraderie of everyone getting together, choosing what you're going to listen to, making decisions. That sometimes with the digital, it is more instinctive and less thought through as far as what you're doing. You
Yeah.
just play a playlist, it just pops up, and you play till you're like, I can't listen anymore.
Right.
Um,
Which, again, my daughter and son-in-law, they have Google. Hey, Google, play this. And then at some point, I just go, hey, Google, switch off, because it's mindlessly going on. But the beauty of the books, and he has a whole little book rack there. He will go and pick, what would you want to read, Rowan? And he'll go and pick it himself. Well, you can't do that digitally as a child, but he knows the visual book that he wants, and he'll bring it over to you, right? So yeah, I mean, if you saw my room right now, I have two bookshelves over there completely jam-packed behind me. Uh, a lot of people send me books that I interview, which I love. And it just something, I think it says a lot about when you go and see someone's house and you go and look at their book selection. It will tell you a lot about them, right? So, and it's a great conversation breaker, or engagement and etc. about, the book. So have you read this? What did you think of it? Ba, 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 so yes, so there's certain arts that we're losing out of convenience, but we've got to, what is that convenience costing us?
yeah. I To speak to that, I picked up a copy of Catcher in the Rye at
Hmm.
a discount store on my way to a multi-day tour, and when I would have little moments between people, I would sometimes steal a few pages of the book to read, and it sparked so many discussions
Hmm.
at the time, people wanting to discuss their thoughts on the book. It was we ended up having a small little book club. It
Hmm.
seemed from noticing it and having read it or asking me about it who hadn't read it, my thoughts on it. I ended up passing it off to somebody who really wanted to read it when I was finished, and it's like they'd heard about it, pass it off, and it becomes kind of a shared experience.
Yes, exactly. I'm a bit
Well,
of, a nerd when it comes to reading. When it was reading the Harry Potter books, I'm the one that went right to the end. Kids, the supper's in the fridge, go and heat it up. Mum, you're a nerd. I'm just there. I like to be left alone. I am just going to dive through, and I don't want to, not a chapter a night or a few pages here and there. It's leave me alone. I'm immersed in the story. And
okay.
I was the one that was reading all of those right to the very end. And for me is I'm at this 7 hours a day on the computer, and so just being able to pick up a book and escape somewhere else is absolutely wonderful. And I think we're going into a world of convenience, but in doing so, we're losing ourselves. And I think it's yes, we can have the convenience. It's wonderful to have the convenience, but what arts are we losing along the way? And what I absolutely love to see is so many children's authors that didn't set out to be children's authors, that it evolved, it became, and now it's become something that they're writing so much or branching off into other things. And I think that it's not just a passion that you've stepped into, but it's also a very hungry need that parents recognize that children need the books. And I think we need to keep this going. And that giving, Christmas is coming up, giving children a book for Christmas or a series of books, is it's absolutely wonderful gift, not only to the child, but to the whole family.
100%. One of the common things I do several book signings every week around the west coast of the U.S. and parents are continually expressing to me the concern with the content of the books that they feel like are being marketed to their kids,
Mm-hmm.
or that there is a deep need for quality, wholesome
Yeah.
books that and I do think it's good to teach through the books, but I feel like there's an underserved concept of books that are just fun for kids to
Yeah.
read. With the work that I do, my goal is to create something that kids really just want to read.
Yeah.
I'm not necessarily trying to teach them. They're going to learn.
Yeah.
You cannot
Dictate
not.
how what they're learning from it. It's going to be their own personal journey.
And writing is so personal
Yeah.
that there is no way for someone to read your writing without getting an understanding of who you are and what you stand for.
Yes.
No matter what, they're going to pick up on
Who
who
you
you
are.
are. You're
Yeah.
with enough time spent with you. Um, but I think books that are just engaging without necessarily trying so hard to make a point, I think is an underserved market that parents, for writers out there who are like, what should I write?
Mm.
Um, an underserved market to write just books that kids want to pick up and just have fun with for a few minutes.
Write
That
from your
with
inner child, right? Don't write from your adulthood. Write from your inner child.
correct. Think about the way a 7-year-old's eyes light up when they pick up a
Mm.
book, and kind of chase that experience of what is going to make this kid just so excited to pick up a book. It's been so rewarding seeing that from
Mm.
kids, and I've been at it for a while enough that some of those kids are older and have explained to me how much they appreciated it when they were younger,
Yes.
and that is a really kind of rich reward. Um, at some point, they're going to have their own kids, and you hope that they want to recapture that experience and do it again with their kids, by getting the books for their kids. We're a few years from that now,
Yeah.
but that's kind of that'll be even more rewarding when that happens. But parents, they worry and they want stuff that they know is going to be good for their kids,
And
and
that
so
they enjoy reading to their kids.
because the thing is, people forget when they're writing that parent, if that book is popular, that parent is going to be reading that book
Over and
Every
over and over and over again.
People
Yes.
recite it to themselves, they're going to be reading that book. And so you want something that's people, the people who buy the books are the moms, sometimes the dads, but mostly the moms. It's
And the
you need to write.
grandparents.
They're going to be going, okay, I like this book. And they need to write something. When you talk about working on multiple levels, the mom, the dad, the grandparents, they are going to pick it up and say, do I want to read this to the kids?
Mhm.
So it needs to connect with them, and it needs to connect with the reader who needs to be excited about it. And so you definitely, it's not just that it's a benefit, but it's kind of a necessity to
Mhm.
create something that's going to work and that has meaning to a wide range of ages, I think.
So when you take on a client, what do you look at in the client before you take them on to help them publish their book?
Well, I am, um, when I work with a client, I'm basically generally willing to work with a client to help make their book. Now, I'm going to weigh in a lot and I'm going to make recommendations. They don't always take my recommendations. Um, but I think it's important if somebody has a desire to publish a book that they have the ability to make the best book that they can make.
Hmm.
I'm not usually going through and telling people, no, 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 we're not going to do your book.
Hmm.
We're help them make their book. But that being said, I've done it enough times and I've seen what's worked and not worked that I definitely am going to say, let's do this. Think about this. I try and think really carefully about making sure that to guide the author in a path that is going to make their book as economically successful
Right.
and as successful in the craft of the book on both levels, because you don't want a beautiful book that's really well done that no one buys, and you also don't want to sell a bunch of books and then have people go, that was terrible,
Yeah,
we're never reading that author's book again. You want it
exactly.
to be from the author's perspective and from the consumer's perspective, and think about both things, and kind of considerations that authors don't automatically think about. How many images do you need to make the book hit a certain price point?
Hmm.
But if you add twice that many pages, you're adding twice the cost, but you're not going to retail it for more.
Hmm.
So, so you need to keep track of things like that, or things that I can kind of gently say, you could simplify this and you'd get the same output, or this would be a lot better if you spent a little more time and attention here. And we actually help authors sometimes recraft their books when they need it, because sometimes authors have an idea for a story and they just don't know how to execute it.
Hmm.
They may have certain parts of their passion. I want this part to be in the story. I want these words to be in the story. But sometimes they get a section of the book that they really are struggling with, and they don't know quite how to get from A to B.
Yeah.
And we can come in and say, have you thought about this? Have you thought about this? Here's a strategy that might help that storyline flow. That collaborative process that we talked about, we will, when requested or needed, we will offer feedback that will help the author sometimes with those collaborative questions that maybe they don't have somebody who knows what they're doing who can do that. At the end of the day, the author is the one responsible for their vision. And what we don't want to do is step in and make it my vision instead of
Right.
their vision.
Yes.
Right. We spoke about that earlier.
Hmm.
So that balancing nature of saying, I think this would improve it. If you disagree, you're the one who's,
Yeah.
this is your baby. From my perspective, I've seen this make books more successful. I've seen these things make books less successful. Um, but at the end of the day, it's the author's voice that's going to win.
Right.
So does that answer your question?
That, to a point, yes. But so people can come in kind of ready for you to kind of help format and perfect. And some people can come in with just a general idea, but they haven't really got it down yet. And then, of course, you've got your repeat customer now who's got it down, and they're just wanting to publish. So you have a few different tiers.
Yes, I'm actually preparing to work on a project right now that they have about 6 or 7 bullet points.
Hmm.
And we're actually going to be helping them craft the story itself, we're helping connect them with the illustrators. We're helping them build it. So essentially we're guiding them through the entirety of the process of the book. Today, I was working on a new project for an author. It's the fourth book we've done with them in about a year and a half. Beautiful friend of mine did the illustrations. Name is Mike Motz, over at mikemotz.com. I'll give him a little quick plug. I work with illustrators. He is an amazing illustrator. Been really good friends with him for years, and he's just did the illustrations on her book. Beautiful. Really excited to work on it. Story's done, drawings are done. We're helping put it together, and then with this author, a lot of times we do some of the back end stuff, creating video promotions for her, things like that. And so, she's been through this process successfully several times, had a great result, and excited to do it again. She's an example of a repeat author who just has everything dialed,
Right.
by the time. And then working on one that's needs, this week we worked on one that needs kind of some TLC, and we've been working on the TLC for the project, and kind of helping take an idea and put it into a shape that's going to be great. And actually, honestly, that's a repeat author as well. We did a book for that author a year or two ago. Had a great experience. Is back with the new book, but the book needs some. With both books, we help shape the book quite a bit to kind of take the idea and put it into a more clear presentation, to take the ideas that the author had and kind of simplify and remove some of the tangents that weren't going anywhere, and make a story that had a clear thrust to it and a clear objective, so that it can connect better with the reader. So
People want some, if it's, if there's going to be several books, people want that continuity, right? They want to have the identification. If you're putting out a book for the first time, yes, it's your baby. But just like with the baby, it's going to learn to walk when it wants to walk. It's going to learn to do this. It's going to learn to do that. We're, custodians, we're guardians. It's nurture it through it. But if you're just going to dictate its path, you might be missing its purpose, so to speak. So, you need the outside help, and having people that, um, as you said, for somebody, I never thought I was going to do a second book, but this experience was so good, and now I've got this great idea for another book, and they feel comfortable in the setting and to go through the process again, because it's not an easy process. Writing it is one thing. There's everything else. And a lot of the time people don't realize when they've written a book, now what? Well, now you've got to be willing to go on podcasts. And as you said, have a video. And there's all the promotion and advertising, social media, and everything else that comes with it. Because that book doesn't spread wings and go out on its own and fly into everybody else's hands. There's a whole different aspect of it that people forget as authors. And that's why I interview so many authors. So you've got to get comfortable with that side of it as well. So there's a lot more than just to writing the book.
we have a little plan that we send our authors, which is like a 90-day. Here's what you should do this day. Here's what you should do this day. Kind of a base, because that is the part that we find terrifies authors the most, is the unknown aspect of what do you do now. And it does change every so often. However, fundamentals I think stay similar. And so it basically, the idea of the plan that we send our authors is to get them started, and then they'll learn sometimes as you go along what's going to work best for their specific project, but they're general day by day things that 20 minutes a day, 30 minutes a day that you can spend to kind of move the needle enough to give you an understanding of what's interesting about authors is, as you do the promotions of your book, you actually discover your book in a way that you did not understand your own book ahead of time.
Yes.
You learn what it's really about, and what about it is connecting with people. So you need enough to get started to figure out what your book really is sometimes on the back end too, on a level that you didn't think about when you're writing it.
Yeah. And,
So
as a podcaster and interviewing so many authors, which I love doing, because again, it's, the artistry and the passion and the conviction and everything else that goes into it. everything that the story is telling us. But there's also different styles across the board with podcasting. So the thing is, listen to the person that you're going to go on air with to know their style and know how, and so you don't feel, well, that's not the same as the last one. I'm a bit shaken up and I don't know what to do with this one. So know the style of the person that you're going on with, and then you can just let yourself go and be organic, which is what we want people to be, right?
Absolutely.
So if,
Hanging out.
yeah, exactly. Just conversation, cup of coffee, glass of wine, whatever it is, it's sharing the story. So how do people A, buy your books, and B, if
Mm.
somebody is an author right now, is it only children's authors or you authors of other things as well?
Authors of other things as well. We've done novels, we've done textbooks, I've done cookbooks, we've done a few memoirs, some poetry. I would say about 75% of what we do is children's books,
Mhm.
but we're not scared of other books at all.
Right.
Uh, so if you're buying my book, CaseyandKyle.com, CaseyandKyle.com. And you can get the books, you can get the shirts, the hoodies, the backpacks, you can get all that stuff there. Um, if you're wanting to have a project done, you're an author, the easiest way to get a hold of me is at willmakesbooks@gmail.com. I set it up back in the day when I was first, you know, figuring stuff out, and that's served me really well. So we just keep it that way, simple. So it's just simple Gmail address, willmakesbooks@gmail.com.
Make sure that is on the show page. There's a lot of people with an idea and they just don't know, but how do I put this on paper? Or yeah, I have the visuals, but I haven't got the art, the artistry to do it, or I have the artistry, but I don't know how to put the words to it. And it doesn't matter because you'll take them in whatever section they're at and help orchestrate them into a whole picture.
We have 30 illustrators that I work with, that are on my team, and they live all over the world and do amazing work. I've done projects with basically all of them,
Hmm.
and so if an author comes and they go, "Hey, I've got a great story. How do I get an illustrator?" We go, "Well, here's a set of them. Here's samples of each one. Which one do you want?" And then we kind of go from there. And
Right.
with each author, we look at the project and we say, "What's the best plan to get you from here to a finished book ready to roll?" And kind of work with the author on what that looks like, and move forward.
So
And
you're not a cookie cutter, although you have a strategy and a plan, but you customize.
correct, because every project has its own need.
Right. So there's always a foundational 1, 2, 3 that one needs to follow because that's the strategy to success. But then the flexibility of being working with the individual and what they need so they can reach success.
Correct.
Excellent.
Well said.
There's a lot of people out there right now that obviously become publishers, and again, it's know the kind of publisher you want to work with. There's a lot there that standard fee, this and that, or work with someone, but they can be very generic. And if you feel no, I've got the children's book, or I've got something that needs to have the graphics along with it, then you need somebody who's going to spend the time to hear you, to work with you, and to understand what it is you're wanting to put out there because it's honoring your journey and what you are doing. So that's the important thing of finding somebody you've got a synergy with. And also the best referral is when somebody goes back to the same person again for the same experience, then they've enjoyed the experience, they come back again. That repeat business shows everybody else what a good experience they could have as well. So if you're interested in actually doing it, then it is Will. I haven't got my glasses on. I wrote it down. Willmakesbooks@gmail.com. But you can also go to the site and you can see everything there, which is CaseyandKyle.com. Christmas is coming up, folks. I mean, books can be given anytime for any reason. You don't need an excuse. But if you're looking at what to give people for Christmas, books, 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 especially for children, especially from grandparents, uncles, aunts, the babysitter, everybody. Books are just a wonderful thing to give. They keep on giving. Everybody has the joy of reading it in a different way, which makes it exciting for a child, or they can read it in a different way. Just look at just going online and buying as many books as you can and wrapping them up and giving them as a Christmas present, and you will make everybody smile in a very, very big way. So thanks so much for sharing with us here today, Will.
Had a great time. Thank you.
Until next time, folks, remember a book is a gift that keeps on giving, and it means so much on so many levels to so many people. So pick out a book and start reading. If you feel you need to write one, it's inside of you, reach out to Will, but don't forget to also gift one as well. Until next time, folks, bye for now. We hope that you enjoyed the show. Find all of our shows on selfdiscoverymedia.com under podcasts or selfdiscoverymedia/shows. And for all our current shows, go to What's New. We are supported by you, the audience. You'll see a nice big shiny blue button for one-time donations, or follow us on Patreon and you will be able to support us there. We enjoy bringing you such wisdom, and the next show will be up in just a moment.